To my brother, wherever you are, I hope you know that I never stop trying. If you ever feel forgotten by the world, remember this. Sometimes the ones who are cast aside become the ones with the deepest strength. They left me for dead once. The world, the people, the silence. But the desert taught me something different. It showed me that even when you're nothing to anyone, your life still belongs to you. And it's worth fighting for, tooth and nail. You won't believe how this ends, not until the very last breath. This story will hit you where you didn't know you could feel. Even stone hearts will crack open before it's done. It started like any other night on the outskirts of Reno. Cold winds, flickering street lamps, and the kind of silence only the forgotten hear. I'd been sleeping behind an abandoned diner off Highway 50, tucked under a rusted awning with my back against a concrete wall and my coat pulled up to my chin. It was January, the kind of cold that bites straight through denim and into your marrow. My only companion was a three-legged mutt named Jack, who never strayed far from me. The stars were especially sharp that night, almost cruel in how clearly they looked down on us. I remember how still everything felt, as if the world itself was holding its breath. I'd spent the day searching dumpsters for half-eaten sandwiches, collecting cans in a torn plastic bag, and dodging the usual stares of disgust. People don't really see you when you're homeless. Not really. They look through you, like you're a piece of the scenery they wish wasn't there. That invisibility was my armor until the night decided to strip it away. Around 2 a.m., Jack started growling low, almost too quiet to hear. His ears were rigid, his body frozen. I sat up slowly, instinct clicking in. Something was wrong, deeply wrong. I couldn't see anything at first, just the blur of wind kicking up sand across the cracked pavement. Then came the sound, faint, fast-paced footsteps, dozens of them, too synchronized to be people. My breath hitched. I looked toward the road, and there, under the orange streetlight, I saw the first set of eyes, pale, almost silver, hovering just above the ground. Then another, and another. A whole line of them, barely visible, low to the earth, moving together with a hunger I could feel in my bones. Coyotes, not one or two, a pack. At first I thought maybe they'd just pass through. They usually do. But these weren't moving like regular coyotes. They were creeping, slow and deliberate, their paws silent against the dirt. They weren't afraid. That's what scared me most. Even Jack, who normally barked at anything with legs, was completely still. Not silent, still. As if his own instincts told him that noise could get us killed. I reached for the broken shovel I kept beside me, my only real weapon. The handle was split, the edge dull, but it felt heavier than usual in my hand. My fingers trembled, not from cold this time, but from something older. Primal. They circled wide at first, forming a crescent around us. I stood slowly, dragging the shovel up with me, my eyes locked on the biggest one. It was darker than the rest, with a scar running from its left eye down to its snout. Its lips curled slightly, exposing yellowed fangs. Jack pressed against my leg, trembling. I whispered, "Stay." Not to him. To myself, stay grounded, stay alert, stay alive. The wind died completely. Then, without a sound, the first coyote lunged. The world snapped into chaos. Teeth, fur, snarling, the sound of claws scraping pavement, and my own voice screaming into the nothing. The shovel met the animal's side with a dull thunk, but it wasn't enough to stop it. It clipped my shoulder, jaws snapping inches from my face. I fell backwards, landing hard on the broken pavement. My elbow lit up with pain. Jack leapt between me and the second coyote, snarling with all the fury his little body could manage. He bought me two precious bloody seconds. I scrambled up, swinging wildly. The blade connected again, this time with a sickening crack. One of them yelped and stumbled back, but 3 more filled its place. Their eyes glowed with madness, not rabid, just desperate. There was no fear in them, no hesitation. They tore at my jeans, ripped into my calf. Pain shot through me like fire. hot and searing. I screamed again, not for help. I knew no one would come, but because the pain demanded it. Blood pooled fast. I could feel it soaking through my sock. I kept swinging. I didn't stop. Every ounce of rage I had from years of being ignored, every curse spat at me by passers-by, every time someone pretended I didn't exist, I poured it into each blow. One went down, then another, but I was losing blood. My hands were slick, my vision blurred. Jack's barks turned to whines. I thought I was going to die right there, behind a diner that no one remembered. Then came the last move, the only one I had left. With the last of my strength, I swung the shovel in a full arc and roared so loud it cracked something in my throat. Not in fear, in defiance. Something about it stopped them, just for a second. The lead coyote backed up. Maybe it was the blood. Maybe it was my eyes. Maybe it was the madness of a man who had nothing left to lose. But they hesitated. Just long enough for me to grab Jack, limp to the dumpster, and hurl myself inside, slamming the lid shut behind us. The dark swallowed me whole. Inside that rusted dumpster I couldn't breathe. The smell of old grease, rot and piss was suffocating, but the pounding of paws outside kept me frozen. I held Jack tight against my chest, his tiny ribs moving like a hummingbird's wings. My ears tuned into every sound, the sniffing, the soft growls, the scraping of claws against metal. They were out there, all of them, waiting. One of them leapt and crashed against the side, shaking the entire thing. I pressed my hand over Jack's snout, terrified he'd bark. I whispered, "Please, not yet," even though I wasn't sure who I was talking to, God, the dog, or myself. The lid above us creaked, and I felt my guts twist. Another crash, this time from behind, and the sharp edge of a claw scraped metal right above my head. I shoved myself lower into the pile of garbage, the corner of a broken bottle slicing across my shoulder. The pain was sharp, but I welcomed it. It meant I was still alive. Jack was shivering so hard I thought he might go into shock. I ran a trembling hand over his side, trying to calm him, but really just trying to convince myself we were still human, still something worth saving. They kept circling, sniffing, waiting for the next mistake. I don't know how long we stayed like that. Could have been 10 minutes, could have been an hour. Time doesn't work right when death is standing on the other side of a steel wall. Every noise became a warning, every creak of the lid, a countdown. I could hear them breathing, not just one, several, the panting rhythm of wild animals, hot with hunger. One of them tried the lid again, and it gave way an inch. I held it shut with my foot, gritting my teeth, the force of its weight pressing against me like a vice. I felt its nails scratch the edge before it dropped back down with a growl. My arms were going numb from holding Jack so tightly, but I didn't dare let go. I could feel his heartbeat matching mine, both of us trapped in a rhythm of pure survival. Then came a sound that made my stomach sink. A long, low howl. Not a warning, a signal. They were calling others, reinforcements. The pack wasn't done with me. I imagined them out there, circling like sharks around a leaking boat, waiting for the moment the lid cracked open again. One good jump, one moment of distraction. That's all it would take. And I was bleeding. The scent of it was everywhere. My leg had gone stiff. I reached down and felt where the largest bite had torn through the denim. Warm blood soaked my palm. It wasn't gushing anymore, but it hadn't stopped either. Infection, blood loss, shock. I knew all three were racing each other inside my body. I had to think. I couldn't just wait. But what could I do? I had nothing. No phone, no light, no one who'd come looking. Not a single person in this whole damn city even knew my name. I'd vanished like smoke, the same way I'd lived, forgotten. Suddenly Jack growled. Not loud, just a low rumble deep in his chest. I felt it before I heard it. The lid moved again, but this time it wasn't Coyote's. There was a scrape of rubber soles. Heavy breathing, human. I panicked. I thought maybe someone was trying to steal cans. The lid lifted halfway, and light stabbed into the dark. I threw up my arms and screamed, feral and blind with fear. A man's voice shouted back, startled. "Whoa! Jesus Christ!" he yelled. "What the hell happened to you?" He dropped the lid and disappeared. For a second I thought I'd imagined him, but then the sound of a truck door slamming and the crunch of footsteps came closer. The lid flung open again, fully this time, and a flashlight hit my face. I squinted, blood smeared across my brow, face caked with sweat and garbage. "Coyotes," I rasped. "They're out there." He looked around, confused, then saw Jack and the wound on my leg. "We need to get you to a hospital," he muttered. Then the sound I'll never forget, a growl right behind him. The man turned just in time to see the lead coyote, the scarred one, emerging from behind a stack of pallets. It didn't rush. It stalked, head low, ears pinned, eyes burning like headlights. He reached for something in his truck. I don't remember what. A tool, maybe. A crowbar. He shouted, waved his arms, threw a bottle. It smashed near the coyote's feet. It flinched, snarled, then backed off. For now. He grabbed me by the arm, hauled me out with a strength I didn't know I could trust. Jack scrambled behind me, tail tucked. We made it to the truck. I don't remember getting in. Just the slam of the door, the roar of the engine, and the moment I looked through the back window and saw them still standing there. The entire pack lined across the edge of the alley. Silent, still, watching, as if they weren't just animals, but something older, something that understood exactly what they'd taken from me. My blood was on their teeth, my fear in their eyes, and somehow I felt like I'd failed them. I'd broken some rule I never understood. The man, his name was Randy, drove fast, asked questions I couldn't answer. "Where the hell were you staying? How long had you been back there? Are those all bite marks?" I just stared ahead, holding Jack in my lap, my hands shaking so badly I couldn't even feel the pain anymore. Just a coldness spreading from the inside out. I remember thinking how strange it was that someone finally saw me, but only after I was nearly torn apart. Blood has a way of making people pay attention. I never wanted it to come to that, but it did. And in those final moments, before I passed out in the passenger seat of Randy's truck, I turned to him and said something I hadn't said to anyone in years. "Thank you." I don't know if he heard it. My mouth was full of the taste of metal, and my voice was barely more than air, but I meant it. Because somehow, against everything I believed, someone had seen me, someone had pulled me out, and the desert, that goddamn cruel desert, hadn't won. Not yet, not all of me. When I woke up in the hospital, everything was white. The lights, the sheets, the ceiling, even the faces blurred around me like clouds. My leg was wrapped in heavy gauze, stiff as cement. There were tubes in my arm, machines blinking beside me. The scent was antiseptic, sharp and cold, a complete opposite of the dumpster's rot and blood. I blinked against the brightness and tried to move, but even lifting my head sent fire down my spine. Jack wasn't there. For a split second, I thought maybe I'd dreamed everything, the alley, the pack, the escape. Then I coughed, and the pain in my ribs reminded me it was all real. A nurse came in, young, maybe mid-20s, with that tight smile people wear when they're not sure how to treat someone like me. "You're lucky," she said, checking my IV. "Doctor says you lost a lot of blood. Infection was close." I nodded, but didn't speak. My throat was like sandpaper. What she didn't know was that I hadn't felt lucky in years. She told me my leg would need rehab, maybe some mobility aids for a while. Multiple puncture wounds, torn muscle, deep bruising. Then she asked the question I knew would come. "Do you have anyone we should call?" I looked away. That silence was my answer. Jack was alive. That's what Randy told me later when he visited. A paper coffee cup in one hand and his truck keys in the other. "He's with my niece," he said. "Won't eat unless it's from a hand, though. Follows her everywhere." I wanted to cry when I heard that, but my body didn't have the strength for it. Randy sat by my bed for a long time, not saying much. He didn't ask about my past, didn't pry, Just told me how he'd gone looking behind that diner because he thought he'd left a wrench. I never would have found you if I hadn't forgotten that damn tool, he said. Funny how fate works. The physical pain was constant, every shift in the bed, every breath too deep, but it was nothing compared to the fear. I couldn't close my eyes without seeing teeth. I'd dream of the eyes first, low and silver, floating in the dark. Then the feeling of being watched, hunted. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, heart racing, eyes darting around the sterile room like the coyotes had followed me in. The doctors called it trauma, said I should speak to someone. I said nothing, because how do you explain the sound of your own body being chewed? I became obsessed with the idea that they hadn't really left, that maybe the pack was still nearby, following Randy, circling his house, waiting. I imagined them outside the hospital, claws on concrete. I asked a nurse once to check the alley behind the building. She gave me that look, the kind they give people like me. Pity dressed as politeness, so I stopped asking, but I watched the window. Every day, every night, and sometimes I swore I saw movement, a shape, a shadow, just enough to make my pulse spike. They'd taken more than flesh. They'd taken sleep, trust, even sound became dangerous. If a janitor's cart squeaked too close, my body tensed. A door creaked, my hands clenched into fists. I had no reason to feel safe anymore. I'd lived rough for a long time, but the streets had rules, unspoken codes. But the wild, the kind of wild, plays by none. It doesn't care if you're hungry or broken or invisible. To them, you're meat. That's it. That truth hit harder than any bite. I asked for a mirror one morning. I needed to see. The nurse hesitated but brought one eventually. My face looked older, thinner, eyes sunken. A line of claw marks ran down the left side of my neck, scabbing over, angry and red. My leg, when I finally saw it during bandage changes, didn't look like mine anymore. Swollen, stitched, purpled and raw. I stared at it for a long time. Not with grief, but with recognition. That's what I'd always felt like inside. Torn up, chewed on, left for dead. Now the outside finally matched. But something shifted after that. Maybe it was the drugs wearing off, or the silence growing too loud. I started remembering the moment the coyotes had backed off, that stare from the scarred one. It hadn't been random. I swear it looked at me like it knew me, not as prey, as something else. I kept replaying it, the way it didn't finish me, the way it let me go. Couldn't have been fear. It wasn't scared. So why? Why let me live when it had every chance to end me? That question nested in my brain like a splinter. One night Randy told me something strange. I've lived out there 20 years, never seen a pack that big come into town. He paused, rubbing his jaw, almost like they were hunting for something, or someone. He meant it as a joke, but my blood ran cold. What if it was personal? What if they smelled something on me that drew them in? I didn't have answers, but I knew one thing. It wasn't over. Not in the way people think. You don't survive something like that and go back to being normal. That version of me was gone. What I didn't expect, what I never thought I'd feel again, was the urge to do something with it. The pain, the fear, even the scars. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about survival anymore. It was about meaning. I couldn't pretend this didn't happen. I couldn't crawl back into the shadows and disappear. The world might have thrown me away, but those animals didn't. They saw me. They tested me, and somehow I was still here. Maybe it was time to figure out why. After I was discharged, Randy offered me a place to stay, a small trailer behind his property near the edge of town. I hesitated at first. People don't usually offer that kind of kindness without expecting something in return. But he didn't ask for anything, just pointed me to the front steps and said, "Water runs cold, but it runs." I moved in with Jack, who hadn't left my side since I got back. The limp in my leg slowed me down, but I didn't care. For the first time in years, I had a key, a bed and a door I could lock. That might not sound like much, but to me, it was everything. Days passed slow, nights slower. I couldn't sleep without the light on, couldn't walk more than 2 blocks without my knee swelling like a melon. But I started writing things down, not just what happened, but what I remembered from before, names I hadn't said out loud in years. My brother, the shelter I left, the face of the caseworker who told me I'd never last on the street. It all came back, tangled and painful, but it came. I wasn't running anymore. I was facing it, one sentence at a time. Sometimes I'd sit outside the trailer, Jack curled up at my feet, and just listen. The desert's quiet isn't like the city's. It breathes, it whispers. And every now and then I swore I could hear paws on gravel, far off, light and deliberate. I knew they were still out there. Maybe not close, maybe not watching, but alive, wild, waiting. And strangely, I didn't fear them anymore. I respected them. They did what they were born to do. No hate, no malice, just hunger. That kind of honesty is rare in the human world. I started volunteering at a small wildlife rehab center that Randy's niece worked at. Cleaning cages, hauling bags of feed, keeping the fox kits warm. Nothing fancy, just small tasks. But the animals didn't judge me. Didn't look at my leg, my face, my clothes. They accepted my silence, my stillness. One day I told a kid visiting the center about the attack. His eyes went wide and he asked if I hated the coyotes. I thought about it, then shook my head. No, I said. They woke me up. Eventually word got around. People started asking me to speak at shelters, at recovery groups, even at a high school once. I didn't like crowds. I still don't. But I went, told the truth, all of it. About the attack, yes, but also about the years before. The loneliness, the hunger, the shame. I saw faces change when I spoke, saw people sit up straighter, eyes glassy, hands clenched. That's when I realized what happened to me wasn't just a survival story. It was a mirror, a reminder that we're all closer to the edge than we like to admit. Then came the day I saw him again. The scarred Coyote. I was driving back from the rehab center, the sun setting behind me in streaks of red and gold. He stood on the ridge above the road, his shape outlined against the sky. Alone this time, still, watching. I pulled over, heart hammering. We stared at each other for what felt like an hour. I didn't move. Neither did he. There was no fear between us, no sound, just a recognition I couldn't explain. Then he turned, slowly, and walked back into the desert. I didn't tell anyone. Some things you keep for yourself, but that moment changed something in me. I realized that survival isn't the end of a story. It's the beginning of a new one. You don't crawl out of hell just to go back to the life that pushed you in. You build something, even if it's small, even if it's shaky. You build. Because if you're still breathing, you still matter, and there's always someone out there who needs to hear that. Jack's getting older now, sleeps more, eats less, but he still wags his tail when I come through the door. We've been through war together. That dog's more than a pet. He's my brother, my witness, my reason. When I look at him, I see every second I fought for, every moment I almost let go, and I promise him, every night we'll never go back to the streets. Never again. We earned this life, with blood, with scars, with teeth. I still walk with a limp. I still wake from dreams that leave me gasping. But I wake up. I keep going. I plant little trees behind the trailer. I teach kids not to fear the wild, but to respect it. I still look out at the desert and wonder where that pack is. Maybe they've moved on. Maybe they're watching someone else now. I just hope whoever they choose next, they make it. I hope they fight, because sometimes that's all we have. That day, the coyotes didn't just tear through my flesh. They shredded the silence I'd been hiding behind for years. They didn't kill me. They named me survivor, fighter, witness. And from that moment on, I wasn't invisible anymore. I was something wild, something seen, and I'll never disappear again.